This is the final chapter of a case that shook Beech Grove, Indiana, and it ended with a voice that hadn't been heard publicly in 2 decades. May 20th, 2025. Inside Indiana State Prison, the clock struck midnight. Benjamin Donnie Ritchie was strapped to a gurney inside the death chamber. He had spent nearly 23 years on death row for the killing of a police officer. But in those final moments, what he chose to eat and what he said before the drugs entered his veins was not what anyone expected. He didn't curse the system. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He looked toward the viewing room and spoke. On September 29, 2000, a 2-year veteran of the Beech Grove Police Department, Officer William Bill Toney, was shot and killed in the line of duty. He left behind a young wife and 2 beautiful children. The killer, Benjamin Donnie Ritchie, didn't make national headlines when he was first arrested. But in Beech Grove, Indiana, everyone knew who he was. This is the true story. It was a Friday evening, September 29, 2000, Beech Grove, Indiana. Around 7 p.m., a white Chevy Astro van was reported stolen from a gas station. Inside were 3 men, 20-year-old Benjamin Donnie Ritchie, Michael Greer, and Michael Moody. There was an officer on duty, Officer Matt Hickey, who spotted the van a short time later and started a chase. Officers Robert Mercury and Bill Toney joined the pursuit. The van crashed into a residential backyard on Churchman Avenue. Greer was captured immediately. Moody had fled earlier. Ritchie ran. And Officer Toney followed him on foot. Through fences, across lawns, into a backyard on Fletcher Lane. There, Ritchie turned. He fired 4 shots from a 9mm Glock. Toney had his bulletproof vest on, but one bullet struck him just above his vest. Another hit his leg. Toney fired back, but collapsed within seconds. CPR was attempted. But it was too late. He died at the spot. Officer William Bill Toney had just hours to go before his 32nd birthday. He'd served with the Beech Grove Police Department for only 2 years. Happily married. Father of 2. His daughters were just 4 years old and 18 months old. Ritchie fled nearly a mile and hid inside a house on Grovewood Drive, the home of his friend and accomplice, Michael Moody. A search began. Officers from different units set out to all areas of the city. It wasn't just any case. An officer was killed. It didn't take long and he was found and arrested there at Moody's house the next morning. He didn't resist. Michael Greer accepted a plea deal in exchange for testifying against Ritchie. Moody was later convicted for assisting a fugitive and possessing a firearm. 3 days after the shooting, the city stood still. On October 2, 2000, Officer William Bill Toney was laid to rest at Washington Park East Cemetery. More than 600 people attended. Officers in full dress uniform lined the pathway, saluting as the casket passed. Bagpipes played as his family entered. His wife, Dee Dee, walked behind the flag-draped coffin, holding the hands of their 2 daughters. The mayor was there. So was the chief of police. And other officers. The Beech Grove Police Department declared it the most painful day in their history. Weeks later, memorial plaques were dedicated across the city. And every September 29, for more than 2 decades, his name was read aloud at roll call. Officer Toney was remembered not only for how he died, but how he lived. In court, the prosecution argued that Ritchie had set an ambush, waiting until Toney cleared the fence, then opening fire. Defense attorneys pointed to mental health issues, brain damage, bipolar disorder, fetal alcohol syndrome. The jury took just 3 hours to find him guilty. At sentencing, Officer Toney's widow, D.D. Horan, stood in court and read her victim impact statement. She spoke through tears. She said Ritchie had taken a father from 2 young girls, a husband, a son. Ritchie looked at her, then laughed, and called her the B word. Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge warned Ritchie he'd be gagged if he spoke again. But he didn't care. Toney's sister said later, "He looked at me, and he wasn't sorry then. He's still not sorry." On October 15, 2002, Benjamin Donnie Ritchie was formally sentenced to death. He laughed as the decision was read. After sentencing, Benjamin Donnie Ritchie was transferred to Indiana State Prison in Michigan City. There, he would remain for nearly 23 years. His cell was cold concrete and steel. 1 narrow bed, a sink, a toilet. Ritchie spent 23 hours a day in isolation, and 1 hour alone in a fenced cage for recreation. Over the years, his attorneys filed appeal after appeal. They pointed to medical records, diagnosing bipolar disorder, fetal alcohol effects, childhood brain trauma. In 2004, the Indiana Supreme Court reviewed his sentence. Still, it upheld the death penalty. The court called the murder deliberate, brutal, and cold-blooded. Federal challenges followed. Each one failed. His name faded from headlines, but it never disappeared from legal dockets. Somewhere in the middle of Ritchie's 23 years on death row, a woman from Sweden named Ivana mailed him a letter. She had seen his case in a documentary. She was curious. Then she became something more. Their first letter was followed by dozens more. Then photos. Then phone calls. Ritchie had begun a relationship from inside a maximum security prison. According to court documents and Department of Correction interviews, their bond grew over 4 years. She visited multiple times. She wrote him poetry. She believed he was misunderstood. Eventually, they planned an escape. She offered to help him break out during a scheduled visit. But just days before it was set to happen, Ritchie changed his mind. In a letter, he told her he didn't want her to throw her life away. The relationship ended shortly after. The Department of Correction later cited the correspondence as part of a psychological profile, but it never led to disciplinary action. It was, perhaps, one of the only human attachments Ritchie formed in 23 years, and he cut it loose himself. In 2020, his execution was scheduled. It was postponed due to ongoing legal challenges over Indiana's execution protocol. In 2025, a new date was set, May 20th. On May 20th, 2025, Indiana State Prison. Just after midnight, inside the facility's death chamber, Benjamin Donnie Ritchie was prepared for execution. It was Indiana's first execution since 2019. For his final meal, he requested Olive Garden's tour of Italy, lasagna, chicken parmigiana, fettuccine alfredo, and a bottle of Coke. There were no special religious rites. No last-minute statements to the court. But in those final minutes, as the IVs were inserted and the sedatives began to flow, Ritchie looked toward the witness room. And he spoke. "I love my family, my friends, and all the support I've gotten. I hope they all find peace." Those were his final words. He did not mention Officer Toney, nor say a word to his family. The lethal injection began shortly after midnight. At 12:46 a.m., he was pronounced dead. He was 45 years old. There were 4 witnesses present, including attorneys and a litigation specialist. Outside the prison, Toney's widow simply said, "We waited 24 years. I hope he made peace with God." There were no major headlines the next day. No national debate. No trending hashtags. No last-minute clemency battles. But quietly, people began to ask questions. Not about Ritchie's guilt. That had never been in doubt. But about who he was, and what might have been different. His attorneys had spent years documenting early signs of brain damage, fetal alcohol exposure, severe psychiatric illness. He was 20 when he killed Officer Toney. He had spent more time on death row than in the free world. And even after 23 years, when the final moment came, Ritchie never said the one thing most were listening for. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I was wrong." Just a short farewell to his own people. Some said it proved what the prosecution had argued all along, that Ritchie was cold, unrepentant. Others wondered if he simply had nothing left to say. What was absent left its own kind of mark. Do you think justice was served? Was 23 years on death row too long, or not long enough? And do you believe someone like Ritchie, damaged early, hardened young, was beyond redemption? Let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you for watching. If this case stayed with you the way it stayed with me, consider subscribing. The next case will haunt you bad. Be here tomorrow to see.